check. And she found out that this doctor that was pursuing her daughter had an amazing record with law enforcement.
Red flag.
I think that's more than a red flag. I think that's a roadblock. When a person's advice is sought in regard to individuals that are considered for marriage, business partnership, etc., he should provide truthful and honest advice. If you want to look in Budayat al-Mujtahid, which is the Islamic Jurist Primer by Noor Keller. No, that's not by Noor Keller. He did Reliance of the Traveler. But it's a classic manual. You can actually find the 6 reasons that you are allowed to so-called backbite. And this is one of them. You're actually supposed to do it. Think about it that the people are entering into completeness. Islam says that you are half of a soul until you find your soul mate, and then you become a whole being. You complete your faith in this measure. There is not a contract in your life. When we get into this contract stuff, inshallah, next class or the class after that, if Mother's Day becomes between, there is not a contract in your life more important than the marriage contract. Because the solemn vow that you make when you get married is the same vow that the prophets made with Allah. That's how important it is. But most people, I've had people to tell me, my daughter's not signing a contract. Astaghfirullah azim. I never heard of a contract in marriage. And these are people that are born Muslim. Yeah, and I'm talking about in the last year of my life. My daughter's not signing a contract. Even the Quran talks about if you're entering into contract, it should be signed by trustworthy witnesses. And we'll talk about that when we get to contracts, but I just want to throw that out. What's really, really strange to me is that I've done a few marriages that in the process of doing the marriage, the people that were signing the contract were the people that smoked weed with each other. And I'm just telling you just like it is. That's not a trustworthy witness. That's not a witness. You want a Muslim witness to sign your marriage contract. Someone that is trustworthy in the community. Someone that is respected. Not someone that's your buddy in crime.
3 witnesses.
No, 2 witnesses. 2 witnesses. We'll get to that, and I'll give you all the proofs for that when we get to the contract stuff. 2 male witnesses, or 2 female witnesses and 1 male.
Female.
This advice should be limited to matters relevant to the affair in question and should not be exceeded to other areas because that may then count as a prohibited form of backbiting. Now, you see, if there are trustworthy people in the community, and say Sarah comes to me and says, you know, I'm thinking about marrying so-and-so, and since I'm a trustworthy imam and I'm going to respect her privacy, knowing that her father is looking out for her as a good wali, I may say to her, I don't think it's in your best interest to marry him. If she can trust me and I have demonstrated my trustworthiness, that's all I need to say. In this modern day, though, not many people are there. So you actually have to say, well, the following things are things that this person has done. But you tell as little as you can for them to get the message. And there's beauty in that. But I will say this that's very important. There's a community in Philadelphia, and actually this was discussed in the conference that I went to in D.C., where a lot of guys were taking 2, 3, and 4 wives. There was an HIV epidemic in that community. They actually ended up losing the masjid. And Afsana knows what I'm talking about, don't you, sister? There were so many sisters that got HIV from these brothers. Let's keep it as little as we can, inshallah. And so, you're obligated. And you see, even the American law has enough, respect for the human being that you don't marry a person, that it's illegal to marry a person and not tell them you got HIV. But it was a major problem. This masjid ended up closing. It was a huge masjid in Philadelphia. There was so much fitna within that masjid because of all this stuff that was going on that the masjid closed. And they actually had purchased a National Guard armory as a masjid. So it went from that to nothing because of a lack of wisdom. I actually went to Hajj with some of these folks. They tried to get me to migrate there. So, Fatima bint Qais reported that her husband Amr bin Hafs sent Ayash bin Abi Rabia to deliver to her a third and final divorce. And he sent with him a quantity of dates and barley as a present to her. Now I think this is amazing because in the world today, when we hear the D word, as in divorce, nobody's giving any gifts. It's like, how much can I get out of the other person? But remember what we covered last week about equality, 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 equality? Do you remember? Is that a yes or is that a, we don't remember? We looked at all of these verses about the equality and how that if you enter into talaq, you do it with equality and you maintain the person and you treat them with respect. In our society, what happens when the D word comes out, the divorce word, out comes the clause. I'm going to take advantage of you as much as I can and I'm going to punish you for the rest of your life. Where is the fear of Allah? So, she protested to Ayash and requested more support. But he responded, by Allah, you do not deserve support unless you were pregnant. She went complaining to Allah's messenger and he asked her, how many times did he divorce you? She replied, 3 times. He said, he is right. Then he does not owe you any support because the marriage was terminal. Now you see in the spirit of what we're talking about when we covered those 2 classes on talaq, with each divorce, she had 3 mitzvahs, inshallah, for them to try to work things out. So now you can understand the gravity of this. That, okay, you had 3 mitzvahs, this was the 3rd strike, now you don't get any money. So this is why this is pointing to the direction of the seriousness of marriage. Yes, brother?
Can we explain that a little bit? Because it's completely, there's words that I want to use, but I can't use them here.
Okay.
And misused when it comes to divorce. So can you, I know you did a class on that, but just because that by itself needs an explanation.
Right. You know what I'd like to do with your permission, since everybody's been through it and I've covered it 3 weeks, can I send you the information and then if you have questions, contact me?
Yeah,
because we covered the 5 forms of divorce here in the class in great detail. And there were Muslim people in this room that are born Muslim that came to me and said, Imam Sykes, I never heard it in my life. Thank you so much for clarifying this. So I'll give that to you and then you and I can actually have coffee. That'll give me an excuse to get together with you. Any questions you have, I'll answer them for you. Because I'd love that anyway. I haven't seen you for a while. I'd like that. All right. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told her to spend her iddah in Sharik's house, but then remembered that some of his male companions go into her house. Now, I want to share something about this and then I'll come back to you, brother. There's something that's done in the Islamic Ummah that is very off, and we're going to talk about it when we talk about the marriage contract and the mahrams. Those people that are prohibited for you in marriage. So I want to ask a question. I just want to see what happens here. When a woman reaches puberty, if she is going to wear hijab, is she supposed to wear hijab in front of her cousins?
Yes.
Absolutely. Why?
Because she can marry them.
Because she can marry them. How many people see a violation of this? All over. All over. As a matter of fact, it's going to surprise you when you learn about brothers-in-laws and stuff like that in the prohibited categories. Because we're going to go into details. I want you to get this. Because this is partly why I deem by Allah that so many cousins sometimes marry. Because she's so pretty. That's my cousin. And I'm allowed. But perhaps if she had been covered and knew that she should set boundaries with her cousin when she reaches puberty, or he, I want to make sure you don't misunderstand that I'm putting this on the female. It's just as much the male as the female. Perhaps it might discourage some of this, because the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best practice is to marry away from your tribe. And today I'm seeing so many problems with in-laws. It's the biggest problem. ISNA, ICNA, every major Islamic organization has written articles, and almost every conference this is discussed, that the biggest problem are in-laws that are not neutral. So then he said to her, spend your iddah in the house of your cousin Abdullah ibn Maktum's. Indeed, he is a blind man, and when you remove your head cover, he cannot see you. When you complete your iddah, inform me, and I'll give you some more advice. Did you raise your hand, brother, a while ago? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. When she completed her iddah, Fatima went to the Prophet ﷺ and told him that both Muawiyah bin Sufyan and Abu Jahl asked for her hand. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, as for Abu Jahl, he is harsh with women and never takes the stick off his shoulder. As for Muawiyah, he is a poor man without any money. Marry Usama bin Zayd. She disliked that, but the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ repeated, marry Usama bin Zayd. She concluded, then I married Usama. Allah put a great deal of good in him, and I was very happy with him. And this is from Sahih Muslim. I want to go back to telling the truth. This is very, very important. It is important to provide truthful information in regard to the two individuals involved in the khitbah. The information should be limited to matters that are expected to have a bearing on the marriage. Absolute truth is required from the two involved parties, the man seeking to marry and the woman being sought, as well as their representatives and any other individuals who are asked for advice. Hiding any problems that one knows about is a sinful act of mistrust in Islam and could result in numerous future predicaments. Now, when I went over this class to make corrections that I don't have with me today, I added a lot of stuff here to do clarifications. For instance, one is required to indicate any physical, spiritual, or mental problems in the two individuals involved in the khitbah. Now let me ask you an honest question, folks. If you have never been exposed to someone who has auditory and visual hallucinations, and you don't know that, and you marry this person, how hard will that be for you?
Very hard.
And this has happened. I have seen this happen. I have seen this secret be kept from people. What about if somebody cannot perform in order to consummate the marriage? Let's say they had prostate cancer. A large portion of men that have had prostate cancer end up with ED. And that doesn't mean education. Can the marriage be consummated if the guy has ED? So is it your responsibility to tell that if you're a family member? Because I want to tell you that I have witnessed people that got married and lived in those marriages unconsummated for years because of the shame. Had people done what a law prescribed prior to the marriage, they would have not lived in shame. And this is an injustice when we look at the spirit of reproduction, the spirit of having children, the spirit of the hadith that talks about how Allah will be honored on the day of judgment by large numbers. And then we withhold this kind of information. If either of them has a physical deficiency such as impotence, venereal disease, he or she should make it known to the other individual before approving the engagements. As for the one who thus learns about some problems in the other person, he is not allowed to publicize that knowledge or expose those secrets. And this is part of that love. I love for my brother what I love for myself. It's part of that internal reality that you understand that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a mercy to mankind. So you don't run around the community telling people, you know, brother so-and-so, well, he's got ED. You don't tell that. Nobody else needs to know.
What if he wants to go marry someone else and they ask him?
Except in the case of marriage.
So if someone asks you, why didn't you marry him? Or whatever.
But then what I would say to them is, are you interested in marrying him? Has he made a proposal to you? If they say yes, well, I'd say there's something you need to know. If they said no, I just was curious why you didn't marry him. Well, why were you curious? Just curious. No reason really. Do you have any interest in him? Sort of. Has he proposed to you? So you see, it's like one of the things that Sheikh Taha taught us is that whenever someone asks us a question, there's not just one question or the answer to every question. He taught us to actually ask the person, is this actually applicable to you? How does this apply to you? Tell me about your specific situation, because Islam addresses things very specifically. That's the beauty of Islam. There are many violations that some Muslims have introduced into the process of kibbah. Many of those violations arise from blind imitation of the non-Muslims. And I had corrected some of this, but alhamdulillah, I can fix it now as we go too. The first one is privacy and intimacy between the engaged couple. And everything I'm sharing with you folks, I've witnessed. So after the engagement and before the marriage contract, the woman's family permit her to go out with the fiancé, have kulwa with him, and even touch and kiss him. We had a situation one time when one woman who had been married and had children was exposing herself on Skype. It wasn't called Skype in that day, it was something before Skype, whatever it was. To this person, this prospective person, we later found out that this person had posed as a Muslim, was a cross-dresser. A man that dresses like a woman. Oh my goodness, that's what I thought too. The woman was so hooked in at this point that she didn't want to hear it of me. But I said, you can't marry this man. Yes, sister. Oh, kulwa. Somebody give me a good... I always think of kulwa is that you can't touch. You're not supposed to touch. But it really, doesn't it also mean you can't be alone?
We privacy.
You can't be in private with them.
Yeah.
So in other words, you cannot be alone. So let me ask you something. When these people have agreed with this, and I see this all the time now, and I actually, you know, just recently in the community, and this has happened in the other side of town as well, where I've known his students that actually slept with new Muslims. And they say they don't do anything. So that's okay. Is that okay? No. And we've got to start teaching Kulwa. And I'm so glad that Susan asked me what it means. Because our people don't know this. And this is why, young people, I love you with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. But when you put yourself in the car alone with the opposite sex, there is a third party in that car that might be more powerful than your passions. And that's called the shaitan. And when I'm talking about young people, I'm talking about everybody in here. Because I'm 56 years of age. And I'm a man. I have needs. If women are flirtatious with me in the community, and I pick up that energy, and they want to see me, I say yes, but my wife sits in with my sessions. Why? Because I'm going to protect myself. You want to see me? No problem. But my wife will be there too.
And you're going to protect them because I'll knock them out.
And she said, I better protect him too because she'll knock him out. So let's make sure we got this. Kulwa is being with them privately. It is dangerous. And I'll tell you that not long ago, a young Muslima came to me, and a lot of young people trust me. They know they can tell me stuff, and I'm going to hold it in my heart, and I'm going to give them good advice, sound advice from the Quran and the Sunnah. And she said, Imam Sykes, she said, I met this guy on the campus, we were doing a project together, and I went to his dorm, and he had on his gym shorts, and he was working out. Just get the picture, folks. He was perspiring. And he said, Imam Sykes, my heart was pounding. I said, this is very normal. I didn't react. I said, but what did you learn from that? She said, I learned that I can't be in privacy with another guy. Because I didn't like those feelings. I wasn't familiar with those feelings. And she said, I know that if I had not gotten myself out of there, something could have happened. She said, he came and he squatted next to me. And I was on the computer. And she said, I looked into his eyes. And she said, Imam Sykes, I was lost. Now, you people that are laughing because you know what I'm talking about. And when you look into those eyes, it's real hard to say, oh, Allah made paradise more beautiful than those eyes. Because we're not there yet. But that's what Yusuf a.s. did.
Yes.
And that's where we've got to be. Because I want to tell you, whether it's a girl or a guy at the gym, when they squat down next to you and you know what's going on, you know that there's no privacy anymore. There's all the people in the gym. You don't even see them because you're lost in your passions. Some people think of the engagement as a test drive. Listen, folks. In America, they will say, well, you don't buy a pair of shoes without trying it on, do you? That's not Islamic. Don't buy into that. It sounds real logical. But when you hear something that sounds logical, you've got to use the logics to break it down. Well, wait a minute. If I try that pair of shoes on, and about 2 weeks later, that girl isn't having her menstrual cycle, and I'm 15 or 16 years old, just how attractive is that right then? And just to share this with you, I have a very dear friend who is an OBGYN that has delivered babies from 2 11-year-old girls this year. Yes. So, when we say these things, young people, I know that it's hard to take it. And I can't tell you how I thank God that you're sitting here listening to this. My heart goes out to you because everybody else is doing it. And it looks so beautiful, and it looks so romantic, and it looks so enticing. But it's a trap. It is a trap. And if you don't believe it, you talk to a 15-year-old that doesn't have any support, that doesn't have a husband, that's trying to stay up with a baby, that sleeps an hour or two and wakes her up and wants to feed and then goes back to bed. And then she's trying to get money, and she's trying to get WIC, and she's trying to get what's it called? It used to be called welfare, but it's called
AFDC.
AFDC, thank you. And she's standing in line with no support. Does that sound attractive? That doesn't sound like that pounding heart, does it? And believe me, it's not. In which they fully try out their partners to see if they will be able to pursue a long life together. With that, they commit many sins, minor and major, including zina. One of the things that we are missing here is that the very act of violating kufa is the first sin. Zina is much longer, way down the road. That's why the Prophet Muhammad said, don't go near to this. What did he mean by that? He said, don't put yourself in the places where this can happen. Protect yourself. Guard your heart. Interestingly enough, many of these engagements prove unsuccessful and end up in separation before marriage. Let me point out something to you. You can do your research. Anywhere from 40 to 52.8% of first marriages end in divorce. So does trying on the test drive work? No. So use your logic. When people say something, look at the results and weigh it out. Say, is this a lie? It sounds real good. But let's look at the results. Let's look at the math. Yes, ma'am.
So what do you recommend for the young folks when they're getting to that age to decide whether or not they should marry somebody, to see if they're compatible? What type of communication?
I recommend that wise parents invite kids that are interested in each other, and they have dinner. And then they send them to someone who has experience that talks to them about the questions that matter. In other words, because of our passions, our hawa, our desires, we need to help govern that. So we don't talk about, oh, you are so pretty. I can't wait till that day I can see you without a hijab on. Oh my God. You know, and the heart's pumping and pounding. We want to know, what have you been through in life? And how has it affected you? And how do you think it will affect you in your relationship? What are the triumphs you have? What is your mission and legacy statement in life?
So how does that work? Because like nowadays, like you have somebody from a different state calling about your daughter, and you're trying to figure out. I mean, you could do background checks and great, you know, comes out great, but you don't know if they're compatible. And you want to give them a little bit of room to talk because, you know, in front of you, they'd be like, okay, hi, how are you, you know, whatever, but you don't want to make a lifelong event.
Now, I'm going to tell you what I would do. I would take a road trip, because the Prophet Muhammad said you don't know anyone until you travel with them. So I would invite this young man, since I have more daughters than I have sons, let's go on a trip together. Now, I also believe that it's important for them to have some time to talk, but not alone. What I mean by that is, I don't think I need to sit here like this and watch my daughter and her suitor. All right, if you cross that line, I'll cut your hand off. I don't think I need to do that. But I think if I have a den and I have a living room, they can sit in the living room because they know that I might just walk in there any moment. But they gotta know the dangers of kulwa. They've got to know the dangers of being in private and the dangers of touching. Because once you touch, it's very hard to, it's like glue. It's like that, what is that kind of glue that holds the Volkswagen up? Crazy glue. It's crazy. It's crazy glue, yeah. It's hard to undo.
So no phone conversations if they live out of state, like let's have phone conversations, see if you guys get along.
I'm not going to say no.
I'm just curious, yeah.
Yeah, I think what's important, sister, because here's what really happens. And I think what you're doing here is really important. What really happens is we send our kids off to college and they meet and the knight is shining on her. And they call and they say, Mom and Dad, can I bring somebody home with me? Well, let me tell you, the reality of the situation is what has already happened on that college campus, we probably don't want to know. In most cases, I'm just keeping it for rizzle for sizzle. But let's just say that it was all on the up and up Islamic, haram, halal. Everything is good. They've never touched, they've never been in the car, nothing. But Dad, I met this person, Mom. Well, yes, by all means, they're welcome to come. How are you going to navigate this in a way to protect yourself? And I think that's how we need to talk to our children. One of the biggest problems I'm seeing is that children cannot be honest with their parents without a reaction. And the one thing my kids said about me was, Dad, we always could talk to you about anything and you never would react. You never exploded. You just responded to us. Now, I don't know that sometimes maybe I should have reacted. I don't know. But I knew that I told my parents, I don't care what you tell me, it's safe. I'm not going to react. I told my children, thank you, that no matter, if you do slip, you are going to slip in adolescence because your brain isn't there. The frontal lobe is not there. You are not operating with a full deck. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, they just aren't. So no matter what you do, you can come and talk to me about it. And we're going to work through this. I want to coach you through this. I want to help navigate through this with you. But the biggest problem I see is that children cannot come and tell their parents stuff without parents reacting. And that shuts the door. As a matter of fact, I have it all the time when people come to me for the first time with their children. You know, Mom will be like, Beta. And now Beta to a 15-year-old boy. And I'll say to the boy, how do you like it when your mom calls you Beta? He said, I hate it. Because I'm not Beta anymore. And this is a guy that's like got body hair. He's smelling because he's come from soccer practice and stuff. You know, the hormones are flaring. We as parents have to know that our relationships, when our children enter into puberty, must shift with them. And we must respect the new space that they're in. And this is wisdom. This is hikmah. And moms, bless your hearts, I know how hard it is to give up your little babies. Don't ever pinch your 13-year-old boy on the cheeks and say, mashallah, you always be my little baby. I love it. Because they hate it. Empower them. Encourage them. Mashallah, you are changing. And I know how hard it is for you. You're adjusting to a new body. You smell different. You have different desires. And sometimes you want to be a little boy and you want to be with us. And sometimes you want to be a man and sometimes you don't know. And you have this big war going on inside of yourself. Am I right, young folks? Anybody want to say I'm right or wrong? I don't mind. I'm right? Thank you. And so we need to be the parents of mercy to those kids. Because let me tell you, it is not easy. I would not be an adolescent. You couldn't pay me to be an adolescent. It is the hardest stage of life. And this is why we need to be a mercy to them. I'm telling you that when I look at young people, honestly, guys don't know, I would lay down and let you walk on me if I thought I could open the door for you to have that safety. I mean that with all my heart. because that's what our young people need. But we come from some cultures that everything is astaghfirullah. So our child comes home and they say, and they're intoxicated with passion. They don't even know what they're doing. They say, Mama, I was talking to this girl today, and for the first time in my life, I thought my heart was going to jump out of my chest. Astaghfirullah. I got to take him out of this school right now. That's called reaction. Instead of saying, MashaAllah, that means you're growing up. Allahu Akbar. Now, how are we going to navigate through that? Tell me more. Let me hear about that heart jumping out of your chest. But Mama doesn't want to hear her baby talk about the heart jumping out of her chest. But let me tell you, that's what Mama needs to hear. Now, how many people agree with me? No, I want to know how many people disagree with me. Is that hikmah or not, folks? Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Are they allowed to call?
Are they allowed to call? I think you have to weigh that in light of what has actually already occurred. I don't believe that the best forms of communication, I'm going to talk about best practice for a minute, are based on telephone. I think that the best forms of communication are based on eye to eye, and let me see how your behavior is. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that if I were entertaining a son-in-law and my daughters were cooperating with me and I had this relationship I'm talking about, I would test them. I'd be late on purpose to pick them up. And then I'd tell them later on, I'd say, I just want to see how you behave.